Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 7 of Scoot Scoot Friday. My name is Mac, and today with us we have our CTO Elwa and our senior product manager Derek joining us for the first time. Super exciting episode. For anyone that is not aware, Derek was just featured in a software keynote that went live yesterday, recapping a lot of the amazing work that's been done on the software front at Apollo over the last few months, really. And that's what we wanted to spend a bit more time talking about today, really digesting and kind of dissecting all the amazing projects that have come to life, how they might improve your writing experience, and also maybe give you a glimpse of what's coming up next. So Derek, can you do me a favor and quickly recap? What was the software keynote all about?
For sure. So thanks, Zach, and thanks, Ella, for having me. So as I kind of described in the keynote, I think last year was a massive shift in like our stack. And I think for a lot of users, you won't necessarily see what we did, but let me tell you, we've been working endless hours kind of on doing everything that we've been doing so far. So really what we did was we switched our technology stack from React Native to fully native for Android and iOS. And there's many benefits as to why we did that. I can name a few of them. So rather than kind of having, I think like we mentioned in the keynote, like having a single source of code that can be transmitted to different types of mobile platforms, we're able to kind of focus on each one individually and to see the pros and cons of each. So one example I can think of off the top of my head would be something as simple as like writing and having your screen off. Okay, so that's not something that we were able to support with React, and it's something we can do now. So it's a very easy example, but for some of our users who are using the old version of the app, you may have seen like when you record a ride, you see like dot to dot to dot, or maybe like one starting point, one finishing point. That's no longer the case. So now you can actually see like your full detail. We actually log it every like second, so you're able to get like one GPS coordinate every second. So that's one quick example I can think of.
So it sounds like you're basically able to utilize the full potential of the hardware that the app is running on, as opposed to kind of being limited by some constraints.
Exactly. So that's one of them. And then the second big one, because we work with suppliers that have their certain libraries and stuff like that. When we integrate those and support them inside of our application, we have to make sure there's like supported libraries. And what we were seeing a lot of the time was that something wasn't supported in React. So we'd have to ask them to then make it supported in React. And that caused us delays. Some users may have noticed things missing and stuff like that. So now we have like full control over it. And it should stay more up to date with Android and iOS.
Awesome. Okay. And so, I think maybe it's worth also dissecting this idea of bugs and kind of crash-free users, right? Because that was also, I think, behind the scenes, a big driver behind why we wanted to transition to a native stack. And a lot of users probably don't get to see the improvement that we made. So maybe, do you mind just recapping what was the crash-free experience like before the switch to native, and what is it now?
Yeah, so I think overall, the crash-free, we didn't have as much knowledge about it because it was kind of using a common framework. We didn't know if those crashes were happening more on Android, happening more on iOS, happening to everyone. So we really didn't know specifically what was causing it. So now the fact that we've split them into two, we can divulge into each one specifically, and we have way more information about it. In terms of the actual crash-free numbers, I will say that previously they were still pretty high. So they were at like above 98%, which is kind of where we wanted.
98 crash-free.
98% crash-free. Yeah, so 2%, let's say, crashes.
Yeah.
I know like the kind of KPI we're going for is 99. But I think for us, the big shift is when you make such a big shift in technology stacks, we want to maintain that same high level that we had. So now it took us about a month. So for some of our early users in January, you may have had some crashes. I think since then, everything has been back to normal. So now we're kind of operating at around 99% crash-free for both platforms, iOS and Android, which is for me, I'm very proud because to make such a big change like that and see it happen in a month, let's say, it's something pretty proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so can you speak a little bit more to what enabled us to finally make the switch, because like you mentioned, it's been a project that's been in the works for a long time.
Yeah.
So have we, hired people or doubled in size or something that allowed for this to happen?
You said the answer. We did. We went from working with like agencies, so design and development agencies that worked as a project that they gave it to us. So we were able to kind of take that and then build a team from scratch. So I joined in June of last year, and then before I joined, we had like a few developers, and now basically the team has grown, doubled, even tripled in size, depending when you look at it. And now we have like full-time dedicated like iOS and Android engineers who are working on it full-time.
Yeah. So to any customers that purchased the City 2022 last year and experienced that first wave of software issues, all the improvements you've seen since then, that's Derek and his team that have been working on it pretty much relentlessly. And I can attest, and Elwha can attest to. We've seen Derek at the office super late, many nights. QAing and testing the app, making sure everything works, because I think that's kind of the challenge of working with software, right? That with hardware, we've now gotten to a place where we know effectively how to test and stress test and understand where issues might appear. But with software, you just kind of have to play with it until you notice them, right?
Yeah.
Or collect that input from users. So if there are any users that are experiencing bugs today, is there anything they can do to let you know what to work on next?
Yeah, I mean, obviously be patient is the first thing. You guys have been very patient so far, so thank you. Second of all, I mean, any comment that you write in socials, so whether it's YouTube, whether it's like a Play Store review, now we only get, not the positive reviews that we're looking for just yet, but I read everything personally. So every day I'm reading comments, I'm reading all the feedback that we're getting, and I'm putting them inside of our backlog. So please continue to do that as much as possible. And I guarantee that in the near future, most of these bigger bugs will be taken care of if they aren't already.
Cool. Yeah. And if you want to contact him personally, his phone number is, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, please keep that feedback coming, because it drives the roadmap for a lot of us, both on the hardware and the software front. So the more feedback, the better. And then in terms of, now that we've made this switch to native, everything is built on the right foundation. What exactly, excuse me, does it allow us to do moving forward? What are the plans for the app?
Oh, I mean, I can't share too much, but definitely we can now focus on features that users will see. So like I said, if you looked at the iOS app, it wasn't updated previously until July of last year. Now we're already rolling them out every month or so. So I think the biggest thing that our users will see is like monthly rollouts of new apps, which is great on both platforms. And then those releases will have completely new features. So obviously, if we talk about the Pro, I can't share too much, but the Pro has its own like set of different like UI and different elements that those users will see. I think moving forward for like every other user, some of the cool things we're working on that I mentioned in the keynote is like having a visual of your ride. So for example, if you use any GPS tracking app, sometimes you want to be able to log like what's your current, what's your voltage, etc. We will implement that to users so they can see that in every single ride, which I think is quite cool. Mm-hmm. Of course, the added support for different sort of scooters is another thing, like with our Phantom. And I think another big one that users might see is like improved flows. So rather than having something that was kind of broken or not working super well, or maybe is way too long, we're looking at kind of simplifying everything from like the ground up. So one thing I didn't mention is the fact that we have our own designer now in-house, right? The Genius. So we really we're looking at him to kind of create these flows and improve the existing app into something that's way more seamless for the user.
That's great. And is there also any effort being directed at kind of fixing any bugs that might come up simultaneously? Because I know new features are exciting, and obviously we want to continue to improve the experience, but you could also look at it the other way, where I think once we posted the keynote, there were a few little comments about, oh, well, how do I, unlock my speed and so and so. So how much would you say are we devoting in terms of resources and time to developing new features and advancing the app versus making sure that the existing users are also taken care of?
So I think previous release, it was like 100% like bug fixes versus 0% new features. And slowly we're kind of sharing them between them. We always have to manage both, right? You can't just focus on new features and then create this huge debt. So in a perfect world, I think depending if we can get to the app to where we want it to be, I would say anywhere between like maybe 20 to 30% would kind of be like fixing legacy bugs or fixing kind of the technical debt that we're growing, that we're grabbing, and then pushing towards new features like that 70 to 60%.
Okay. Because I know there's going to be users and comments on this video that say, well, how about you fix the freaking pin reset, right? By the way, it has been fixed, so just update your app and it should be taken care of. But like Derek said, we're very much still paying attention to taking care of any remaining bugs while developing new features. So
yeah, the pin reset, for the record, is almost out. It's in its last stage of testing.
By the time this video gets posted,
yeah, hopefully,
which is in 5 minutes. So. No pressure. But okay, cool. And Elwha, so tell me more broadly then, why do we care about software at Apollo?
Because it's enabling so much, and I think with the new Pro, we see it. We really see it. Before, it was really just unlocking the speed that we mentioned, the acceleration, the regen, the classics that people can try now. But now that we are able to have like the box light in it, which control all the lights on the Pro, it really unlocked a lot of new features. You can control how the hardware look, but also how you interact with it. And it's the same thing for the IoT. And now we have the GPS antenna in it, so you're going to be able to track it. And tracking it is one thing, but you need to be able to control it. You need to be able to subscribe to that service, and all of this is going to become like the Apollo like portal, right? We want this to become the point of reference where people go to book servicing, to see what's wrong with their scooters. So it's really going to become the central point, I think, of the scooter.
Yeah, and I would add, like we talk about, the hardware can go so far, and then the sort of software experience takes and like adds onto it, right? So in some of our cases, firmware updates could be available potentially to like add new functionality or fix new bugs and stuff like that. And that's something that we also improved with this newest release, the firmware update that's available, not for everyone, but when it is, it's a much more seamless process for everyone.
Yeah, I really like what you both said, both on the portal front, as well as on the kind of the hardware keeps getting better as time goes on. Because I think that the direction we've been wanting to take for quite a while is making our website the pre-purchase destination. The second you've made your purchase, you basically use the app for everything else, right? So, and why? Well, because we have so much more information that allows us to be more helpful, whatever the action or the request is, because it's able to connect to your hardware. So we really believe that, even things like tracking your package, once all of our scooters have IoT, will be done through the app, right? Like Awa said, subscribing to additional services like extended warranty or Connect Plus and whatnot. And then, of course, being able to take full advantage of all the amazing features of the app as well are coming down the pipe. So really exciting. And then on the hardware integration front, guys, so has that been an easy experience making the new lineup, the Pro work with the software?
I mean, maybe you take the first stab at it.
No, it's a nightmare. We like the controllers we're making. They look fantastic from the exterior. They perform also fantastically with the actual hardware. But when it's time to connect to it, it's another story. We work with a supplier that keeps sending. They have software already built for controllers, and we keep adding new stuff on it, like the IoT or like a smart BMS. Or like the famous box light that took so many iterations to have it right. But so every time you're adding like this, you're like amending the original code instead of creating new ones. So they're gonna throw random line of code in there, like we discovered one yesterday that's messing up the whole thing. So no, it's quite challenging to work with it. But now we're getting at a spot that is pretty good. But when we're gonna let's say develop the Mac 3 controller, I think we're gonna redo it from the ground up, like all the codes to have something that we own 100% to make the whole process easier for us. For the customer, it's gonna be the same thing. They are both gonna perform fantastically, but for us, it's like when we explain switching from React Native to native. When you're native, it's so much easier to develop. It's the same thing we are now with the controller and the legacy SDK that we're working on with.
Yeah, to your point, not much to add to that. It's been difficult. It's definitely getting better, I think, as time goes on. We're learning better ways to kind of communicate and work together. But for sure, it's been, I think, part of the struggle for sure.
And one of the biggest challenges is working with people in China, right? You send feedback, you get like your answer just the next day, and half of the time they don't understand what you mean. Because it's like our developers with like their language are trying to talk to their project manager. And so like it's like the game of telephone,
broken telephone.
So that's another big part of the challenge.
Yeah, fair enough. So it sounds like ultimately the controller is really the only thing that will continue to advance the performance of the scooter, because the motors are what they are, the batteries are what they are. I mean, if Samsung and LG want to put more effort into developing better cells, great, but for the most part we're kind of limited by what we can get from the market. But it sounds like in order to take full advantage of those components and maximize really the efficiency there, we need to develop a better controller that can get the most out of it.
And you can do certain things to improve those components, like the battery. We won't do anything because it's just like it's $1 billion market. We don't have the capacity, but you can put like a smart BMS that when you connect it to the controller, then you gain more insight. Or for the motor, like we mentioned multiple times, we have like our own motor algorithm that's going to really calibrate to the motor controller. So we're at like 96% efficiency pretty much. So yeah, it's pretty close to perfection, I think, where the market is. But what we can really play on is the motor controller. And I think the next one's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's going to be just as big of a leap that the original controller we had in the Phantom compared to the Mac 1. the Mach 1 to the Mach 2 is just an iteration on power, but the Mach 2 to the Mach 3, it's going to be just as big of a leap as the first ones.
So when it comes to software benefits for customers, I would say there are three main categories that we can summarize everything into. The first one is that it enhances the experience with the hardware, and we can dive into that in a moment. The second one is that it enhances the post-purchase support experience. So really, how do I get help and how quickly am I able to resolve my issue? And then the third and final one would be safety and security. So kind of abstracting from the experience and really focusing just on the core components of keeping your scooter, running for longer. So let's dive into the first one, just experience. Can you give me an example of how our users might benefit in terms of the riding experience from using the Apollo app?
Yeah, I can give a quick one. I think the ride recording personally is like one of my favorite features. So let's say navigating somewhere is cool because I'm able to see where I'm going. I'm also able to see like my estimated range, so I have an idea of where I'm going. Eventually, we're going to have more support for like what's the best route, or like we already have it, but like we're going to kind of optimize your route for your user. So that's like one cool thing. But I think after the fact, having like your ride history, again, for anybody who uses like recording apps, like they're personally my favorite, and it's cool to like kind of look at like your little diary and like your history of all your rides and stuff, And I think if you're making a commute every day to the same place, it's still cool to see like the amount of kilometers you're riding, and you're able to have a log of like how many kilometers am I saving versus a car versus walking, how much time am I saving? I think that's pretty cool. I think that's one big benefit of using like our app with our scooters is it's like having that sort of relationship between the hardware, the software, and like where it brought you.
So will there be an Apollo Wrapped kind of coming soon?
Possibly. I don't want to say too much, but we're definitely looking into some sort of summary or like weekly or monthly reporting for sure.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we perhaps don't do quite enough of yet today is this idea of maximizing or really capturing the impact that you're making by choosing to ride one of our scooters, right? So obviously you're taking a scooter, not a car, right? That has certain consequences from an emissions perspective, and we would love to be able to visualize what that is in terms of equivalent of kilos of or whatever the unit of measurement is in terms of CO2, right? So I think getting into that space where we can actually concretely say, well, you rode 1,000 kilometers this year, and that is equivalent to X, Y, and Z, would be a really fun and engaging way to.
For sure. And just like the amount of cost savings between like charging it electrically versus gas. In some provinces or states or throughout the world, there's a huge discrepancy there, right?
Yeah,
so just knowing that you can like pay off what you paid for the scooter in like a matter of, weeks or months, it's also a pretty cool way to look at it.
Because I think that's something that we don't really do a good enough job of today either, is this idea of, although our scooters are expensive, when you look at the alternative, which is buying a car or riding a car or even public transit, they still work out to a fraction of the cost, right? I mean, when you factor in things like insurance and parking, and never mind the time you waste in traffic and the opportunity cost of that time, and of course the actual cost of purchasing a car, it becomes a fraction, right? And it's, to your point, it's not just the upfront cost that's much lower. It's the ongoing kind of day in, day out cost that it's exponentially lower on a scooter. And we can do a whole separate episode about kind of the philosophy, of Apollo towards micromobility more broadly. But the app is going to play a key role in actually capturing the value that we're creating there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And in terms of the customer experience and support, how can the app help our users in that situation?
So we haven't launched it just yet, but anyone who's used our website, they see the integration of the Smart Assistant, right? So imagine you're a user and you have your app and you're connected and you have an error pop up on your display. So the whole goal for us of what we're trying to do is when I see that notification on my display in the app, it tells me what to do. So it's not like I have to contact our CX team or Google something. I will have the instructions of what to do, know what are the next steps to take there already. So that's, of course, like when you're reacting, right, to an error. But how would, of course, if we can like prevent one from happening in the future. So the sort of next phase of what we're trying to go is, hey, you've driven, 499 kilometers on that set of tires. Maybe you need to switch them. I don't know the exact number, but kind of giving foresight into our customers to say, hey, like you might want to look into changing this eventually, like an oil change in a car. There are certain parts that maybe don't last forever. So being able to kind of proactively tell our users like, hey, by the way, like the lifespan is reaching its limit. Like you might want to think about doing it before it breaks. That's like one way I can think of supporting users. Yeah,
and I think that's a really good way to also plug our repair centers and the fact that we're switching away from stocking parts individually. I'm not sure if this has been announced formally yet, but we're going to start stocking semi-assemblies. So basically, if let's say you have a motor defect, right? In theory, the app would be able to diagnose that, that then links you to the specific semi-assembly on the website, which is basically the whole front wheel, which includes the motor and the tire and everything else that comes with that. You're able to place that order. There's ideally some sort of logic that says, if you're within your warranty period, it's basically free. And then you get that package delivered, which then takes you through the installation process, and voila, you've been able to get the perfect support experience, even if you don't live in a place that's near a repair center. So again, massive implications for customers, especially outside of our major hubs. And we believe that this is a huge pillar when it comes to supporting our customers more broadly. And then the last, but definitely not least, security. So what's going on with security and the app?
Pro or unpro?
Let's do both. What is it today, and what does the future look like in terms of security?
For now, if we ignore the pro and we just look at our basic settings, I mean, of course, we have like PIN codes and stuff like that lock all of our scooters. All of that information is saved, in our back end, where we can do it by email, by serial number. That's linked to Shopify information. So all of that is very, very well documented. And that means that if ever, for example, we get a request saying, hey, like my scooter's been stolen or something like that, we have like a whole kind of trace of what potentially may have happened. So that's what it looks like today, I'd say. I think kind of going forward, of course, with the Pro, by offering some sort of service that would allow you to track your scooter at all times, even if the battery is dead, that's kind of where we're going in the future. So being able to track your scooter and know where it is, location at 24/7, having our CX team also be able to track it to make sure, and then potentially marking it as stolen, being able to kind of turn it off, so that no one can access it, and always knowing where it might be in case of theft.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's a huge game changer for us. That's why we decided to go with IoT. And then even moving forward, having, again, the native integration, we could support native functionality from iOS and Android, so that if you do get in a crash or if something happens, we could call emergency contact and stuff like that. That's not planned for the near future, but definitely something that we want to do at some point.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I think that the upside of our scooters is that they're so beautiful. The downside is that they're also a very obvious target for thieves, right? So I think having that security feature is going to go a long way, especially in places like New York, where I can definitely see the Pro being used by food delivery drivers and whatnot. You want to pop into a store, you want to leave it outside. We want to get to a place where it's sort of like the iPhone, where nobody steals iPhones anymore because it's so easy to make them useless once they've been stolen, right? There's just like kind of the button of that, you press it and it's gone for good. And no matter how many times you try and jailbreak it, it's just not going to come back to life. So we kind of want to do the same thing to our scooters. And for anyone watching this that is considering stealing an Apollo Pro, we can assure you that it's going to be a very embarrassing and painful process getting it stolen. Elwha's been spending a lot of time tweaking the exact recording that's going to play in the event that it's meddled with. So we highly discourage that. And then what you said about crash detection is also really interesting. Do you think you could give us a bit more insight into how that could potentially work? Would it require a camera on the scooter, or would it just be taking advantage of the, built-in functionalities of an iPhone or an Android device?
To be discussed. But for now, I'd say what we're thinking is just like, if, for example, like the accelerometers and gyroscopes that are inside phones, but we kind of utilize those natively. So if, for example, you have a ride and you're currently riding, we would detect maybe there's some sort of stop or some sort of crash. And then you can set it up on your phone that it would potentially call someone, like Apple does right now, I know. But we would want to make that more into our experience. So maybe have certain settings related to that. And kind of utilize that functionality a little bit more.
Yeah. I could totally see the applications of this being helpful for insurance providers as well, right? So not only in the event that you crash, but what if somebody crashes into you, right? Which is actually the cause of accidents more often than not. You're riding through downtown and a car pulls up and hits you, right? So being able to kind of record that and show some evidence that it wasn't me that caused the accident, I think would go a long way. So again, you can see how basically what's amazing about software is that you open this one tiny door and it kind of takes you somewhere where you have 3 more doors, and then each one of those doors has 3 more doors as well. So it gets very complex very fast. But the exciting part is that the applications are virtually infinite, and I think the name of the game has been and will continue to be saying no to the right things and only focusing on the right things, right? So thank you, guys. Was there anything you wanted to add from your end in terms of what our followers, what our community might want to know about the app?
I guess the only thing I kind of mentioned, it's sound like a broken record, but for those of you, again, who haven't seen many changes over the past, let's say 6 to 8 months, that will change. I think you're already seeing on Android, we have, I think, a release every 2 to 4 weeks. iOS will be the same. So just keep updating the app as much as possible. If you are using React, or let's say our older version 2.x, please update. You'll see benefits right away.
There's 5% of our users that are still using the old version.
Yeah.
So update it, please.
Please.
Cool.
Do we
Alon,
have
anything
any-
to add?
No.
No?
Pretty clear.
So no questions today. Feel free to, as always, comment on the video, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Like we mentioned, we always do read those comments and do our best to answer them. So thank you for tuning in, as always, and we'll see you next Friday. Should be an exciting one. We'll be talking about the City Air and Ghost upgrade kits. So make sure to see us at 1:30 p.m. Eastern next Friday.
Thank you.